Social media has introduced an era where companies are competing for customers now more than ever due to the ease of access to their personal information and preferences. In our interconnected world where social media platforms have become an integral part of our lives, questions surrounding the ethics of privacy have never been more critical. One particular social media giant that comes to mind that has had a history of privacy concerns is Facebook. The main viewpoint of those expressing concern towards Facebook lies in whether it is ethically correct that the collection of our personal data is being converted to monetization and raking in millions of dollars for the company. Additionally, many have questioned whether the pressure of keeping user privacy safe lies fully on Facebook or rather lies in the hands of the user. The argument for Facebook is that no one is forced to use their platform or disclose any of their personal information. However, it can be easily reasoned that once a user decides to partake in the platform, Facebook has an obligation to keep the user's data safe. So essentially, what we need to decipher is if privacy is important, and as a business, is Facebook acting ethically? Throughout this presentation, we will explore specific instances where Facebook has said to have violated ethical principles and critically evaluate their practices against both utilitarian and Kantian ethical frameworks. By doing so, I hope to shed light on the importance of privacy in our digital age and foster meaningful discussions on the ethical responsibilities of technology companies in general. To begin our analysis on Facebook and whether their actions are considered ethically correct, it would be beneficial to look at Facebook's timeline. As the use of online media platforms become the norm in society, individuals are somewhat forced to give up their personal information to large companies and trust that their data will be protected and kept out of the hands of outside parties that may use their information unethically. Unfortunately, Facebook has not kept a strong record of doing so with their users' data. Let's take a closer look at a few specific examples of Facebook's misuse of user data. All of the information on this timeline is supplied by an NBC News Network article, which will be linked in the description. Okay, so let's begin all the way back in December of 2007. Here we have Facebook's first run-in with privacy concerns when it was revealed that outside companies could track purchases by Facebook users and then notify their Facebook friends of what had been bought, many times without any user consent. Have you ever noticed when you try to log into other apps such as Spotify or play games like Farmville, it prompts you to log in through Facebook? This feature is what allowed other apps to access user data, if not only the individual signing in, but their friends as well. This sparked an apology from Mark Zuckerberg, where he revealed the program behind the process was called Beacon. He said, quote, "We were excited about Beacon because we believed a lot of information people wanted to share isn't on Facebook." Essentially, this decision was made without informing users that information was being shared about them without their knowledge. Moving on a few years later, in 2010, Facebook launched its facial recognition software and tagging feature. This launch caused enough uproar with users that the state of Illinois filed a lawsuit against Facebook. The suit said that the Silicon Valley company violated an Illinois biometric privacy law by harvesting facial data for tag suggestions from the photos of millions of users in the state without their permission and without telling them how long the data would be kept. Here, once again, we can see that Facebook is initiating updates without thinking about the implications on their users. Moving on to 2011, the Federal Trade Commission charged Facebook for not keeping its privacy promises to its users. Regulators said Facebook falsely claimed that third-party apps were able to access only the data they needed to operate. In reaction, Facebook allowed these third-party apps to have more access than what was originally disclosed to the users, leading to information then being given to advertisers in order to tailor their content to the specific user. In 2013, a bug exposed the email addresses and phone numbers of 6 million Facebook users to anyone who had some connection to the person or knew at least one piece of their contact information. Finally, fast forward to 2018, we have the most prominent discussed event, the Cambridge Analytica scandal. Here, a Cambridge University researcher accessed the information of 50 million Facebook users and sold the information to Cambridge Analytica. This was completely against Facebook privacy policies. Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook's CEO and co-founder, spoke out on the data harvesting allegations on an apology tour where he admitted to Facebook simply not doing enough to protect user privacy. Policy changes were announced, but the damage of the years prior has already been done. Throughout all of these news reports and scrutinization of Facebook's privacy protection, some argue for the social media giant. After all, when a user decides to use an online platform, it could be considered their responsibility for what they put online. Is Facebook being unjustly scrutinized, or does its users have reasons to be upset? Let us determine this for ourselves by comparing the business practices and decisions of Facebook with the most prominent philosophies in business ethics. Before we begin our ethical analysis on Facebook and its dealings with users' personal privacy, it would be helpful to understand why personal privacy is so important. The best ethical philosophy to apply in this instance is that of Immanuel Kant. Immanuel Kant's ethical framework emphasizes the inherent worth and autonomy of individuals. At the core of Kantian ethics lies the question of what an individual, or in our case, a corporation, ought to do in any given circumstance. What we ought to do, or our duties, can be reasoned by applying Kant's fundamental principle of ethics, the categorical imperative. For the purpose of this video, we will apply the three most prominent formulations of the categorical imperative. Number 1, act only on maxims which you can will to be universal laws of nature. Number 2, always treat the humanity in a person as an end and never as a means merely. Number 3, so act as if you were a member of an ideal kingdom of ends in which you were both subject and sovereign at the same time. Applying the first formulation of this principle to privacy helps explain its importance from an ethical standpoint. In the case of breaching privacy, if we were to universalize the practice of violating privacy, it would mean that personal information could be accessed, used, or shared without consent or proper safeguards for everyone. This would undermine the autonomy and individual rights of individuals, leading to a contradiction and rendering the breach of privacy unethical. Under the categorical imperative, private information would cease to exist. In Norman E. Bowie's analysis of the Kantian approach to business ethics, he states if a maxim or an action, when universalized, is self-defeating, then the contemplated action is not ethical. So now that we have proven that privacy is in fact important and it should be a consideration in business ethics, let's apply ethics to Facebook's actions specifically. Before I continue to use Kantian ethics as a basis for argument, I want to briefly mention how utilitarian views would apply to this case and why it isn't ideal to use for this analysis. Utilitarianism, a consequentialist ethical theory, asserts that the morality of an action is determined by its overall consequences. In the case of Facebook, their pursuit for the greatest good for the greatest number has resulted in significant violations for privacy. Facebook's business model revolves around collecting vast amounts of personal data to enable targeted advertising, tailored content, and enhanced user experiences. This data-driven approach may provide benefits to a large number of users, but it comes at a cost of compromising individual privacy. While utilitarianism aims for the greater good, it should not come at the expense of individuals' fundamental rights to privacy. Utilitarianism is not focused on profit maximization, but rather long-term social utility. Under the teachings of John Stuart Mill, who is one of the most influential utilitarian philosophers, he stresses humans should have a fellow feeling towards another human being and integrate a strong cultural concern for others. With Facebook, it seems there was little practical consideration for the impact of the use of private data, as there is a breach of privacy. Now, I want to revert back to Kantian ethics because utilitarianism doesn't apply as strongly. The ethics of Facebook and privacy is not a matter of happiness or pleasure that we're speaking on. It's more of the ethical decision to use private data collected by the users in a way that they are not aware of, which is why Kantian ethics is more applicable in this situation. Based on the incidents that I've spoken on earlier, it can be concluded that Facebook's motive was purely from a profit-maximizing standpoint. According to Kant, as stated in our lecture, what counts is not the actions which one sees, but their inner principles which one does not see. Let's apply this perspective on Facebook's actions. Facebook's relentless pursuit of user data, often without explicit consent, demonstrates a disregard for individual dignity. By commodifying personal information and treating others as a means to generate profit, Facebook undermines the principles of Kantian ethics. Going back to the second formulation of Kant's categorical imperative, treating people as mere means to an end is morally wrong. Kantian ethics suggests that we have a duty to respect and protect privacy as an essential component of human dignity. Facebook's failure to adequately safeguard user data and inform users about the extent of data collection and usage considers its actions unethical. Not only are they breaching privacy rights, but they are doing it in a way that is deceiving. This is a contractual agreement between Facebook and its users in the form of Facebook's privacy policy. Ignoring the policy or acting against it in a way that is not beneficial to both parties is a complete loss of respect for the person, or in this case, the user. Facebook's actions can be considered a negative freedom under Kantian terms. Additionally, according to Kant's third formulation of the categorical imperative, the rules that we apply to an organization must be rules that can be endorsed by everyone in the organization. Now, because this situation is dealing with a corporation and its users, I'm viewing everyone as one and the same. Meaning, If we were to say that Facebook can, in fact, be lenient with its users' data, then Facebook's private files should also be leniently available or accessible to everyone. This, of course, does not work both ways, which leads us to find Facebook's actions a breach of ethics under the Kantian approach. I do want to leave off this presentation with a quote. Though different cultures put different values on privacy or make it impossible to define a stable universal value, there is broad consensus that privacy does have an intrinsic core and social value. Hence, a privacy approach that embraces the law, ethical principles, and societal and environmental concerns is possible despite the complexity of and difficulty in upholding data privacy. Users are becoming increasingly aware of their data being bought, sold, and used without their consent, which is fostering an environment of mistrust and apprehension when it comes to using platforms such as Facebook. Luckily, it seems that some major data collection companies such as Apple have taken note of the social media giant's failure to uphold ethical standards. According to an article written by the Harvard Business Review, a recent Apple upgrade to its iPhone operating system has allowed users to shut down data harvesters' ability to track them across their many apps. This has hit Facebook hard as they projected to lose around $10 billion in revenue as they so heavily relied on cross-app tracking. Once again, you can see that a leading factor to this breach of data privacy was due to monetization. After comparing Facebook's transgressions with utilitarian and Kantian ethical philosophies, it is evident that Facebook has failed to adhere to ethical standards. Moving forward, it is crucial that Facebook should integrate ethical considerations into their decision-making processes, ensuring that the pursuit of profit aligns with respect for privacy and human dignity. With consumer awareness growing on the matter of data privacy, it seems hopeful that regardless of Facebook's decisions, external factors are being implemented to disrupt their current unethical practices.